Hello again, and welcome to another exciting episode of Backstage Showcase. I'm your host, Andrew Bermudez, and today we are going to be talking about another really interesting project that actually never went beyond the conceptual stage, even though it was actually officially announced. It was intended as more of an experimental project that wanted to really test the boundaries of where I could go in terms of animation, but ultimately it was canceled for, honestly, a lot of those same reasons. And I know a lot of people were disappointed when this project ended up being canceled. But this project in particular is none other than Lego Island, the animated series. Now, what a lot of people thought initially was that from our body of work that it would be a stop motion series. However, the idea I wanted to do was do a Flash animated series in the same vein as the old online comic adventures based on the Lego Island video games that were on Lego.com back in the early 2000s. But the main reason why I wanted to do this as a Flash animated series was for a more practical reason, if you know what I mean. Essentially, the thing I thought to myself was that if I made this a stop motion series, the problem is that then I would have to have this whole island set built indefinitely, assembled indefinitely, that is. And it's not the problem of that, of visiting the same locations over and over again. That's not the issue. I mean, that's a big part of doing an animated series or just any series overall. It was the problem in that this whole island set was going to be sitting around for extended periods of time, and I wouldn't have room to then also be working on the actual stop motion films, if you know what I mean. I mean, there would be no space because it would all be taken up by this huge island set. For what exists for this animated series in terms of artwork and production documents, there actually is quite a bit of artwork and written material available. So quickly, let's first run through all of these character designs, where here's the interesting fact. Even before this series had been canceled, I had literally finalized all of the character designs. I had already figured out what their new looks would be if they were going to get new looks. I already figured out what their occupations would be. I had already figured out how this would then translate into physical pieces, because one thing I knew at the end of the day was that in the future, with certain crossover projects, because this was officially going to be canonized for the official cinematic universe, that later on I could then feature Lego Island characters within these stop motion films. So then I could create those interactive dynamics, if you know what I mean, in relation to this timeline. So that's what's one of the things I was thinking about when I was designing the characters, or in a lot of cases redesigning characters. I was also thinking about a few other things that had kind of bothered me, to be honest, about the Lego Island video games. Like, one thing that has always bothered me was the fact that there was never a fire station on Lego Island. There was actually, at one time, there was a fire station, but it was literally just a quick blink and you'll miss it moment in the Brickster the Space Pirate Lego Island comic adventure. Other than that, there's never been a fire station on the island, so I wanted to fix that. So I cast some of the smaller, insignificant characters from the game as firefighters. So I was thinking about things like that. Another thing was that for certain occupations, I wanted to create more uniforms. I guess that's the only way I could really put it. And I was just, again, thinking about who these characters are, who they are in the games, what I could do to perhaps flesh out some of the smaller characters more, and so forth. For designing the island itself, I went with a layout very reminiscent of the way the island looked in the first game. However, I did tweak some things because I decided that this time around, I was going to have a lot more on the island. I wanted to have all sorts of different buildings that weren't there on the island in the first game because, at the time, software limitations, they could only do so much. But with this Flash series, I was thinking of putting all sorts of different facilities on the island. So like a school and resorts and all these different things, a museum and just then taking all these different ideas that I had, taking pieces from all 3 games and all the comic adventures, and then kind of putting it all together, creating this layout, creating essentially a city on an island that's a city, if you know what I mean. The animated series even had its own fully animated teaser that was presented at the second Mustache Maniacs Film Co. Fan Choice Awards. This was obviously the only time that the show was ever animated. And again, here there was also some assets that were actually created just for this teaser, like the whole pizzeria scene that was created just for the teaser, although to be honest it probably would have been reused had the series actually been made. But this is the only animation for the show that was ever created. So why exactly was this series canceled? Well, there was a whole plethora of reasons. The primary one being in that Project U took up so much time to start developing and get off the ground, coupled with the fact that Johnny Thunder and the Wisdom of the Ancients needed to be completed at the time. There was just too much going on, and this was just another thing on the plate that was just taking up a lot of extra time. And as time went on, focus started shifting away from the traditional animation because there was a lot of demand for the stop motion animation. So that's when this project started to slip off to the side. But the thing that ultimately canceled this project was actually a policy change that was made in early 2016, I believe. The policy change says that there is a certain time limit for a particular project, and for actually any project, in that the rule states is that if a project is left dormant for 1 full year, so a full 365 days, then that project is by default canceled. It can be resurrected at a later date, but it is for all intents and purposes considered canceled. And when that policy went into effect, Lego Island, the animated series, had already gone past 365 days since the last time it had been worked on. So then, under that new rule, it by default became canceled. While a lot of people were upset that this series was ultimately abandoned, it does not mean that we've abandoned adapting the Lego Islands video games for animation. For example, a lot of the Lego Island characters are actually going to appear in Legends of the Universe, and we are actually throwing around ideas of how to further adapt the video games for possibly its own standalone movie. Though do not consider that an official confirmation or anything like that. It's just ideas that we're throwing around. And that concludes another exciting episode of Backstage Showcase. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, Mustache Maniacs Film Co., as well as our brand new website at andrewberm.wixsite.com/mustachemaniacs. Plus, also be sure to check out our official wiki, our official Facebook page, and so much more in our network. And don't forget to check out other videos by us. including the very ever popular Forest of Fear, the classic Johnny Thunder and the Secret of Marco Polo, as well as some of our newer films like Clone. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all again for next episode.